Kicking off the list at number 5, the Landmark Inn. Located in the Upper Peninsula of Michigan, right around Lake Superior, you'll find the Landmark Inn. Yeah, nice and cute and cozy. Come on in, take your coat off, stay a while. This fancy hotel was originally built in 1930 as a luxury accommodation for wealthy business owners from all around the United States. Sounds like a good time. Let's gather, let's talk shop around candles. These business owners would visit the Landmark to check on their business interests, all that good stuff. Though for its 100 years being open to guests, the hotel has had multiple reports of, you guessed it, ghosts and paranormal activity. It's so common at the Landmark Inn that the ghost hunters and paranormal investigators, they make trips out to the hotel quite often just to check in and be like, hey, how's it going? And they put on their gadgets and they just check in on them. They can rely on them. The hotel's 6th floor is home to one of the saddest stories the hotel has ever seen. This story takes place in the 1930s when the hotel was a new, lively social and cultural center in town. The story revolves around a ship worker who fell in love with a local librarian and conducted their love affair in the Lilac Room. Yeah, of all places, of course. Let's go meet the Lilac Room. Sounds beautiful. And that was where the man was staying. Perfect place to meet. The couple was said to have a planned wedding upon his return from the last voyage on the sometimes treacherous Lake Superior. Unfortunately, their love affair ended in tragedy when his ship met with a storm and sank to the bottom of a lake. He never returned to the shore, and the librarian mourned the man in said Lilac Room, eventually dying herself of a broken heart. The heartbreaking story comes with many reports of the Lilac Room now being haunted. Yeah, rightfully so. As a large number of guests has reported hearing cries and whispers from a female. The female is also seen by many guests and workers on the 6th floor near the Lilac Room, crying and mourning for her loved one. A less romantic story that is associated with the hotel goes back to when it was even finished being built. During construction, a man ended the life of his girlfriend due to anger and jealousy, and this took place right after she told him about her past boyfriends and their relationship history, just normal stuff that he flipped out on, just a monster. And since the hotel was still being built, to conceal the evidence, the man buried her in the unfinished basement. Just horrible stuff. You knew I was going there and you're like, ah, please don't. To this day, decades later, visitors and employees report hearing cries from that basement, and some report hearing whispers from a female voice asking for them to find her body. I just got goosebumps. That's real goosebumps. No matter how much time goes by, these two women, heartbroken for different reasons, still haunt said hotel today. Number 4, Michigan Bell Telephone Building. The Bell Telephone Building can be found in downtown Grand Rapids. It's known from the legend that the building is haunted by 2 ghosts. It's always 2, eh? Always gotta have pairs. Good things come in pairs. Even demons. These spirits have consistently caused chaos throughout the buildings for years in their own unique personal way. We love it. We love a unique ghost. The spirits that haunt the Bell Building are rumored to be Warren and Virginia Randall, a couple who used to reside in the Grand Rapids. Back in 1907, they moved from Detroit and bought the Judd White Mansion in Grand Rapids, which has now been torn down and built into what we now know as the Bell Telephone Building. So a lot of history there already. Over the years of living in this new house, Warren and Virginia's relationship started to crumble as Warren became very strange and paranoid almost, creating hardships in their relationship. In 1908, Virginia became tired of Warren's strange and aggressive behavior, so she decided, I'm out of here, peace. She left him. One night, 3 years after they were separated, Warren convinced Virginia into taking a car ride with them, hoping to get back together, maybe talk it out. The two of them ended up at the Judd White House, where their verbal disagreement turned horrible, and Warren sadly took the life of Virginia. Then he proceeded to end his own life in the very same moment. The tragic accident that happened in the Judd White House became public knowledge, and the house was left empty with no one wanting to occupy it. Yeah, more than fair. I'm like, what's rent? Also, what happened? No. The house remained abandoned for 10 years after the accident until they finally just decided to tear the thing down completely. Thus in 1924 they built the Bell Telephone Building on the ground, which still is in operation today. Yeah, they didn't tear that one down, that one's still going strong. Due to the horrifying scenes that happened on the grounds of the Bell Building, many claim that the spirits of Randall and Virginia still remain, haunting the new building. Some say that ghosts move into the new building and remain there to this day. I mean, I think that's possible. Ghosts like to move, they can go through walls, they can probably relocate. Through the years of operation in the office building, visitors and employees all report being harassed by strange late night calls, which have been traced back to be coming from inside of the building itself. Yeah, inside the house. You guessed it, it's upstairs, that's so scary. Due to this and the strange eerie feelings that the employees feel while they're even working, it's safe to say Randall and Virginia may remain on the grounds. Most likely, they're definitely there. It sounds like they're for sure there.
Number 3, Boston Common. Most common fact about the Common, one of the most haunted places places in Boston. That rhymed really weird, didn't it? If you're out for a walk and feel the need to brush up on your American history, then you can be sure to either see the ladies by the trees or the Patriot men rushing the battlefront. Well, what's left behind from them at least. The Boston Common had a multi-purpose identity through the centuries. Originally as a farm, and then trading grounds for the British and American military, the Common was used as a camp during the American Revolutionary War. 20 minutes to load these old muskets and a lot of people dying. It was also used for public hangings up until 1817, most of which were from the large oaks, which were eventually all replaced with gallows in 1769. These grounds held weight during the witch trials and made a perfect open concept park that a spectacle could be enjoyed at. These people were sick. This place has seen its fair share of violence. The 350-year-old park is full of graves, ghosts, and gallows. It's almost impossible to know just how many bodies lay underneath the park, like a cesspool of unmarked graves from many different eras. Most buried here were low class, sick, or died in battle. Oh, and of course were hanged in front of the public. This place is home to many dark shadows, cold spots, and the occasional smell of gunpowder. Next time you're in Boston, swing by one of America's oldest and fullest cemeteries and see if you can see anything for yourself. Number 2. The Danver State Hospital. The Danver State Hospital, or also known as the Danver State Insane Asylum, was a psychiatric hospital located in Danvers, Massachusetts. It was built in 1874 and opened in 1878 on the isolated site in rural Massachusetts, which, fun fact, the judge who preceded the Salem witch trials lived on. That's bad karma already, isn't it? Despite being included in the National Registry for Historical Places in 1984, the majority of the building was demolished in 2007. At a cost of $1.5 million at the time, the hospital originally consisted of 2 main center buildings with housing for the administration, with 4 radiating wings on each side. The outermost wards were reserved for the most hostile patients. This was a prominent location where medications were being tested by the government, and the favored lobotomy was being fleshed out. When shock therapy failed to control the population, lobotomies started, and in 1939 the population of the hospital swelled to almost over 2,400 patients. A total of 278 people died at the hospital that same year. Neurology experts often call Danvers the birthplace of the prefrontal lobotomy. Ouch. Visitors to the hospital during these years reported lobotomy patients wandering around staring blankly at nothing, unaware of who they were or what they were doing. Large budget cuts in the 60s played a major role in the progression of closing the Danvers State Hospital, and with nicknames like Hell Hill Hospital and Lunatic Asylum, the hospital began slowly closing its facilities by 1985. The original hospital wards were closed and abandoned soon after. During the 80s, reports began to filter out of the hospital about missing teenage patients. The stories of ghostly figures and shadows in the windows were thriving. Are the ghosts of the lobotomized patients still aimlessly walking the realms of this now demolished hospital? What do you think? And number 1, the Bridgewater Triangle. Just a couple miles south of Boston is one of the most interesting and bizarre places in Massachusetts. I chose this as the number 1 spot due to not only the paranormal ghostly figures that have been seen across the vast plains, but 200 miles of connected weird events that will definitely catch our attention. It's named from the triangle shape. The paranormal events and phenomenon that occurs within these mapped lines includes as many as orbs, UFOs, Bigfoots, fairies, skinwalkers, alien hybrids, you name it, it's there. Well, possibly there. The towns of Raynham, Brockton, Norton, and Taunton are all subject to a universal head scratcher. In the 70s there of course was a surge of UFO witnesses, at the same time several Bigfoot. Huh, that's interesting. Massachusetts just keeps getting stranger and stranger, doesn't it? Huge humanoid creatures, motherships, and landed UFOs have also been spotted and reported within this 200 square foot mile radius. Do you think this place is like a Skinwalker Ranch type of place? Maybe some motherships are trying to just reconnect with the Wi-Fi upstairs? I don't know. Whatever it is, the Bridgewater Triangle has been home to numerous documentaries and folklore and attracts spooky goers each year with its variety of paranormal activity.
Coming in at number 5, we have Terrace Inn. Located just north of the city of Petoskey lies the Victorian inn called Terrace Inn. The inn opened in 1911 and was known to be a luxury 38-room Victorian resort, though the perception of the Terrace Inn has since changed from a large number of scary ghost reports. It also doesn't help that there have been multiple deaths on the premise. business. Before this building was an inn, it was 2 boarding houses until they were torn down to create what we now know as Terrace Inn. During construction, 2 workers fell off a beam and sadly passed away. Therefore, it's rumored that their spirits may have settled in at the inn once construction was complete. That's not the only accident and ghost story that has occurred at the Terrace Inn though, as many years later there was a woman named Abby Sweet who was staying at the inn. Abby was pregnant and unfortunately fell and lost her life. After that event occurred, her husband Edward passed away from heartbreak just a few years later. This accident occurred in room 211, which is known to have the most reports of ghost experiences and paranormal activity. That isn't the only spirit lurking in the inn though, as there is the interactive youth, a boy between the ages of 12 to 14 who has been seen inhabiting the basement. That being said, his identity and the reason for his presence are unknown. Over the decades there have been many reports of paranormal activity at the inn. If you ask the desk clerk for the inn's ghost files, they'll hand over a thick folder with accounts from past guests and employees. Even more frightening, it seems these reports may very well be true, as the reports span over 25 years written by strangers with similar ghost stories. Most reports from guests and workers are of hearing sounds of footsteps and voices late at night. Additionally, doors open and close by themselves unexplainably. Some have even reported hearing the sound of a piano playing or a party being held, but when investigated, the area the sounds were coming from was vacant. Plenty of paranormal investigators have spent the night at this haunted hotel, and they all agree it's crawling with paranormal activity. Lucky for the guests though, the investigators and workers all agree that the spirits aren't harmful or hold negative energy. That all being said, this historic inn remains one of our most paranormally active locations in Michigan. In at number 4 we have Soo Point Lighthouse. On the shores of Lake Michigan sits Soo Point Lighthouse. The lighthouse has been in operation since 1895 and it's the only active light left on the lake, but behind its walls holds the stories and spirits. Between 1902 and 1910, Joseph Willie Townsend was the lighthouse keeper who lived in the upstairs bedroom with his wife. For decades it's been said that Captain Willie Townsend remains attached to the old structure. The captain died at the age of 63 in 1910 and his death remains a mystery, though some believed it was cancer as he was known to be a heavy smoker. His body was embalmed in the basement of the lighthouse. Once Mr. Townsend died, some curious individuals got inside and went into the basement, where they found pieces of an old broken up kitchen table. Once they reassembled the table, that's when the paranormal activity began. The table chairs kept getting rearranged on their own and silverware was set on the table in a specific pattern, the way the captain preferred them. There have been multiple reports of a strong smell of cigar smoke within the lighthouse. Additionally, the captain's face has been seen in the upstairs bedroom mirror on 13 different occasions. The Soo Point Lighthouse is one of the Upper Peninsula Paranormal Research Society's favourite spots to investigate due to its high activity from the paranormal. They have seen the alleged shadow of Townsend move behind the curtains of the lighthouse and have also seen him appear in a mirror. Not only that, but one guest had even said that during her visit she saw a man wearing a heavy blue coat walking across the yard of the lighthouse. She waved at the man, but he just ignored her. Not thinking much of it, she went on with her day. When the guest got home and did research on the lighthouse, she realized the man she saw was the captain himself. And to this day, those who visit Soo Point Lighthouse leave with stories that turn non-believers into believers of the paranormal.
Number 3 on this list is Central City Masonic Cemetery. Of course we had to have a cemetery on this list. No haunted place list would be complete without at least one of them. Thrillist says, founded as a mining town in the late 1800s, Central City is now known as a destination for those looking to head to the hills for a gambling fix in the casinos that now dot the area. But one thing hasn't changed. The woman in black who twice a year appears in this hilltop cemetery above the town. Known as the Columbine Lady, she comes to visit the grave of John Cameron, a prominent former resident of Central City who died in 1884. Some believe she is his fiancée, appearing to leave flowers for her lost love on November 1st, the anniversary of Cameron's death, and April 5th, a date for which the significance remains a mystery, much like the woman herself. This This place is safe to go to if, of course, you do not go during these times. She's been coming for a long time, and anyone who tried to interfere with her has had to pay the price. Now, people kind of suspect that she was in a relationship with John Cameron, but there's also another theory. Many people think that John actually wronged her in his life, and that this woman in black comes twice a year to double check that John is still dead and hasn't come back to life by some means. Pretty scary tale for sure, one that you probably don't want to get involved with. Number 2 on this list is the Broadmore. Located in Colorado Springs, this hotel would be freaking awesome if it wasn't so haunted. Thrillist says this sprawling 5-star hotel has a lot to offer for anyone seeking a relaxing and indulgent getaway. But along with the golf course, spa, and nearby zoo, there's one feature you won't find in any brochure. Staff and guests alike have reported the presence of a woman, often in the penthouse where Julia Penrose, co-founder of the property, once lived. While not confirmed, Penrose's death is said to have been surrounded by a strange occurrence in which she went missing and was later found, confused and shaking in the woods nearby with no memory of how she got there. She passed away a week later, and perhaps her spirit remains, watching over the property and seeking answers about her own mysterious death. Now I am wondering, man, how did Penrose die? Like, this whole story feels like a movie or something like that. I truly think somebody needs to get in here and investigate what the heck happened here. Because, like, should we be scared of the region because this is gonna happen again? Was Julia doing something specific before she disappeared, and should we avoid doing that thing? There are just so many questions that need to be answered here, and sadly I can't do it from the comfort of Toronto. That being said, I'm also not trying to end up like Julia, and therefore will be leaving this job to somebody far more qualified. And finally, number 1 on this list is the Highlands Ranch Mansion. A truly picturesque mansion, one that's been standing for over 100 years and one that's home to a ghostly spirit. Thrillist says this sprawling stone mansion, built in 1891, is often rented for weddings and events due to its impressive structural beauty and picturesque prairie views. But it's also a historic property and somewhat of a museum of the times, with a bit of paranormal activity sprinkled in. The ghost of Julia Kistler, daughter of F. Kistler, who bought the property in 1926, is said to haunt the home, with visitors and staff alike reporting hearing a woman's sobs, seeing a silhouette figure moving about when the mansion was otherwise vacant, and lights sporadically turning on and off. I don't know about you guys, but during my wedding ceremony, I want to hear beautiful sounding music, not the sobs of some ghost woman thing. Apparently she's crying all the time, and this woman's emotions are not something to play with. There's a story where once several children were playing around here. There was a wedding ceremony scheduled here for later that day, and the children were off doing what kids do before the proceedings got underway. They ran into this ghost crying, and then they started to make fun of her. They were rude and definitely unkind, but they also didn't deserve what she did next. It's said that in a fit of rage, she flew inside their bodies and possessed each and every one of them for a short time, showing them things that were truly terrifying. Things that have ultimately changed those boys' lives and altered their mentality forever. Any ghost that's capable of doing something like that, that's one that I don't want to be around. Number 5 on this list is the Molly Brown House. If you live in Denver, then there is no way that you aren't familiar with this haunted place. Thrillist says you've no doubt heard of the Molly Brown House and likely passed it on the street once or twice too. Molly Brown was a notable member of Denver's elite, and perhaps known best for being a Titanic survivor, and despite allegedly living a relatively happy life, visitors to the museum and staff have reported quite a bit of strange happenings. Some have smelled what's believed to be husband J.J. Brown's pipe, or have witnessed lights off and on the fritz, and staff have reported furniture being seemingly rearranged. Sometimes figures can even be seen roaming the house. A visit is worth it alone for the history, but the potential for getting a bit spooked or walking into a cold spot is definitely an added bonus. We once again have one of those locations where no one has any idea why it's haunted, it just is. Maybe it's the connection to the Titanic that has got this place acting funky. Obviously that was a very unnatural occurrence and took the lives of tons of people in a very sad way. So I could believe that the Titanic and the survivor of the Titanic plays some role into why this place is haunted the way that it is. Good news is that this isn't the worst haunting that you can run into. Like, yes, you will get a little scared for sure. You might smell something funny or have a ghost pull something on you or even maybe have small valuables go missing. But ultimately you probably shouldn't be dragged to the underworld here by some shadow demon or anything like that. So I guess if you were to visit any place on this list, then this one wouldn't be the worst. Just be prepared for what's coming, because if you aren't, then it could leave you with some serious mental trauma. Number 4 on this list is Phantom Canyon Road. You need to be very careful on this road because there is a good chance you could suffer a serious crash if you aren't. Thrillist says a haunted road is one thing, but a haunted road in Colorado means you're likely on the edge of a mountain and at some serious elevation. Phantom Canyon Road is a detour off the Gold Belt Tour byway connecting Cripple Creek and Florence and was originally the railroad for that route. As you drive along, you can clearly see the ghost towns of Wilbur, Adelaide, and Glenbrook, and legend has it that the reason for Phantom Canyon's name is credited to sightings of a man wearing a prison uniform walking along the tracks in the 1890s. The man supposedly had been executed at the Colorado State Penitentiary a few days earlier. So yeah guys, you better have your wits about you, because if you don't, this ghost might come out and startle the crap out of you, and then the next thing you know, you're gonna be face deep into a tree somewhere. It also just adds to the horror ambiance that you're driving past several ghost towns along the way. Like, of course, they just had to be on the side of the road as you're also getting stalked by this ghost prisoner. No one really knows what this prisoner wants with you, but let's face it, I can't imagine it's good. My dude was executed back in the day, so for one, what he did was probably pretty bad to warrant a punishment like that, and then secondly, he literally got executed, and I can only guess that his ghost probably isn't too pleased about that. Y'all need to be especially careful if you're driving down this road, because at any point this guy could pop out.
Number 3, the Henderson Castle. Established in 1895, this castle is a hub for many spirits and paranormal activity. I mean, it's a castle. The original owners, Frank and Mary Henderson, are said to haunt the castle as they passed away back in 1899. Yeah, I wouldn't want to leave either, living or dead. Additionally, other spirits are said to reside in the castle, a young girl and a dog. Yeah, a dog! We've got a dog ghost. How do you deal with that? Ghost barks? That'd be so scary. In 2005, the castle was occupied by Peter Livingstone McNellis and his family. When the family resided in the castle, Livingstone's son, Vincent, before anyone else had ever reported anything strange happening in the house, he said that he saw an apparition of a figure in the Victorian room, originally the changing room for one Mary Henderson. The son said while pointing at a picture of a woman dressed in an old period clothing, some Victorian clothing, that was the woman he saw wearing that same clothing. I would throw up. If someone ever said that, I'd be like, oh, this Victorian painting? And one former innkeeper who stayed at the castle each night told Livingstone on numerous occasions that she also felt a presence coming up and down the staircase, a movement passing her on the stairs when she would walk by. Ugh, these are scary. Top 5 is like, you know, or top 10 is scary fish. This is hard. This is some scary stuff. 9 a.m. I'm already getting spooked. While now the castle is being used for a bed and breakfast, guests have fallen victim to ghosts as well. Yeah, it's not over yet. The Henderson Castle is a very paranormal active ground that many ghost hunters have investigated, and they've confirmed, in fact, that it's haunted by spirits. I trust them. The people that can go into these castles and physically do this, I'm like, yep, I trust your opinion, whatever. He just comes out, he's like, haunted. We're like, thanks, Daryl. This has been confirmed as these ghosts have interacted with many paranormal investigator teams, in addition to guests and employees of the castle. Yeah, they're just harassing everyone. The ghosts seem to be friendly, not evil whatsoever, so that's a good side, I guess, to being haunted by ghosts. They have been known to speak and physically touch guests and employees. Just they touch them on their back, side, shoulder, always in the back. You never see it coming. It's always in this region. Not only that, but there's also been reports of radios making weird noises or turning on by themselves, even though they're either unplugged or just either turned off. Both bad, both scary. Guests and employees have also reported hearing footsteps upstairs, slamming doors from unexplainable sources, and some ghosts have been wearing the clothes that they wore while they were alive. Clothes that they wore while they died in, probably. As the spirit of Mary Henderson has been reported as many guests at the top of the staircase, wearing her usual getup. Imagine being like a clown, like a jester, and then you die in that, and that's what you look like as a ghost. You're like, what? I was doing a mascot gig. I don't look like a shark forever. Number 2, Allegan Lodge. The old Allegan Elk Lodge was built in 1909. It was used as a psychiatric and TB hospital until its closure in 1948. The lodge was a former hospital that was frequented by mobster Al Capone, and one that many say is haunted by at least 7 different ghosts. Yeah, you thought 2 was bad. Add 5 more. Now we got 7 ghosts. And it's currently on the auction block in Allegan. If you have a lot of money and bravery, there you go. While the structure was originally built by physician John Robinson in 1909, somewhere in the 1920s, it was sold to a doctor from the Chicago area who had allegedly had underworld ties. That's a great doctor. That's just who you want working on your pancreas. Brought pancreas back today. The facility was supposedly frequented by mafia figures such as Al Capone, the Prohibition-era Chicago mob boss, and his men. Yeah, well, they needed medical attention or when they simply needed to get away from Chicago, this is where they'd go. The old Elks Lodge, Al Capone. He's like, oh, it's cozy, they have great soup. Years later, it was used as an Eagles Lodge and an Elks Lodge. And in 2010, it was acquired by an Allegan woman who began renovating the property, but now she wants to sell it. Yeah, can't imagine why. Because one of the former doctors who owns the lodge had underworld ties, maybe? Something like that? I don't know. It led to a lot of people believing that there's a lot of undercover stuff about this lodge. It's still happening to this day. I don't know why I'm doing this like it's like over there, but I'm like, there's something going on in that lodge, especially as it's known to hold 7 different paranormal entities, like I mentioned previously. For many years, employees and visitors have told stories of spirits who relentlessly roam the building. Some of the paranormal activity that has been experienced here includes cabinets opening up by themselves in the kitchen, sounds of children laughing, it's always calming in the morning, photographic anomalies captured throughout the building, and like you name it, shadowy figures in the basement, all bad. Notably where the morgue was located, the basement, good stuff, a lot of stuff happening in there. There'd be knocking on the front door, indiscernible conversations, and ringing of the doorbell when no one was present. Yeah, good stuff. Again, I have goosebumps, they're back. Guests also heard footsteps and the sound of hospital activity long after being used as one. They'd also see full-bodied apparitions of children. They would just see ghost children. That would be it. I wouldn't have to see any more. I would just see the ghost children and be like, again, see ya. Like that's. And finally, number 1, Point O Barks Lighthouse. There are plenty of lighthouses in Michigan, and plenty of them are rumored to be haunted, of course, because they're lighthouses and they're creepy, as they normally are. And this one is no exception. Built in 1847, real old, a lot of history with this one. The lighthouse is located on Point O Barks. As the legend goes, early to mid 1800s, Peter Shook had been Point O Barks' first lighthouse keeper. He was the OG. In 1849, Peter drowned while he and a couple of friends were sailing to Port Huron to pick up supplies for the lighthouse. He left behind 8 kids and his wife Catherine, and she took over at that point for Peter's duties, thus becoming Michigan's first female lighthouse keeper. Since then, people have claimed to see the spirit of Catherine walking along the edge of a cliff dressed in mourning clothes, as she is still heartbroken by the loss of her lover, of course. As we talked about earlier, ghosts like to wear the things that they were, that they passed away in. Again, would hate to be a clown outfit, that would suck. She had also been spotted in the window of the 2nd floor wearing an apron, along with an apparition being seen, footsteps ascending and descending the tower stairs, and giggling has also been heard. Yeah, you hear giggling and there's cold spots, therefore haunted, for sure haunted. And the smell of burnt tobacco has also been wafting through the air many times. Lighthouses are pretty stressful, more than fair. When paranormal investigators, specifically the Southeast Michigan Paranormal Society team, when they had a 2-day intensive investigation after their search, they concluded that they believe that there is every reason for the lighthouse to be haunted. The investigators did some electric voice phenomenon work in the living room, and then they heard loud thuds from overheard. Like, where did they get this gear from, Like, I want this gear. I have some questions of myself going on in the apartment. I want to swing it around a bit. A sound of something scraping along the floor as well, and additionally, during their investigation, the rocking chair had moved 2 feet and was still moving. Just love to keep rocking around. We love that. We love haunted rocking chairs. We love unexplainable forces. While they were upstairs, they also reported hearing heavy footsteps from another unknown source. So many ghosts, there's rocking chairs, people moving around, working in the basement. It doesn't sound like the afterlife is a peaceful one, if I'm being honest. Sounds like there's a lot of to do after you die. I'm not really looking forward to it. I thought I could just kind of float around in your paintings, but now it sounds like I'm gonna have to go and wear this. wear my morning clothes, who knows?
Number 5. Area 51, Nevada. Starting out our list, we have the most obvious entry. In the American state of Nevada, you will find no shortage of places to go on vacation. Despite being a desert, you will find locations like the Hoover Dam, Red Rock Canyon, and of course, the various casinos and attractions in Las Vegas. Of course, a location that you will not find yourself getting into is the military base located on the salt flats of Groom Lake, which is colloquially known as Area 51. For years, Area 51 has been the subject of conspiracy theories involving everything from government testing to UFO activity. Adding to its mystique is the fact that the US government wouldn't even officially acknowledge that it existed until 2013. Its official use is apparently the testing of experimental aircraft, but the level of security at the base is extremely high, even for a government base. Employees of Area 51 are flown in on a private airline known as Janet Airlines, with Janet being an acronym that stands for just another non-existent terminal. Some former employees have reported getting paid through private companies that they have no involvement with in order to avoid a paper trail linking them to the base. Some theories about the purpose of Area 51 include it being used to develop energy weapons for the Strategic Defense Initiative, to develop time travel technology, and most infamously, for studying, storing, and reverse engineering the remains of crashed alien ships, including those that were found at the Roswell crash site. As it is a closed-off and secret government facility, tourists are of course not allowed to get into the site, with signs around the perimeter promising prosecution and possibly even deadly force against trespassers. Of course, this hasn't stopped alien enthusiasts from making the journey to Nevada to see the number of Area 51 and alien-adjacent attractions, such as bus tours of the extraterrestrial highway, the black mailbox, and the outskirts of this secret government facility. Number 4. The Princess Theatre, Alberta. In the Canadian city of Edmonton, Alberta, there is no shortage of movie theaters, with multiple malls housing multiple multiplexes, enabling local cinema lovers to watch the latest in entertainment. However, for many years, the crown jewel for movie lovers in Edmonton was not the Cineplex in West Edmonton Mall, or even the Garneau Theatre, which shows independent and classic films. No, for many years, the most classic of the theaters was the Princess Theatre on White Avenue. Built in 1914 for a then staggering $75,000, this 3-story single-screen theater would show moving pictures, concerts, and vaudeville acts, while also having a basement billiards parlor for those not interested in the shows. The theater was known for implementing extremely novel and modern elements, such as a fireproof projection room, an electric time projection clock, an electronic ticketing machine, forced air ventilation, and even refrigerated fountain beverages. The theater was soon drawn into economic hardship and was forced to construct rental apartments on the upper and lower floors. One of these apartment renters was soon met with a tragic and disturbing end. According to local legend, an engaged woman lived in one of the upper apartments, but mere days before she was due to be wed, she was scorned by her fiancé. She was found hanging from the rafters while dressed in her wedding dress. In the years that followed, employees and patrons of the princess reported seeing a ghostly woman wearing a white dress who would suddenly appear and disappear, ascending the theater's grand staircase, wandering its ornate gold-leafed halls, or even hovering over the projection room. The princess was a staple for local cinema lovers, as well as fans of the paranormal for decades. But if you were interested in taking in a show or catching a glimpse of the ghostly bride, you may have missed your window, as the theater closed its doors after 108 years of operation in mid-2022. No new owners or plans for the historical theater have been announced, and the doors remained locked to the public, with only the ghosts still residing inside of this historic building.
In at number 3 we have the Allen House. The Allen House was built back in 1905 and was named after the original owner, Joe Lee Allen, where he lived in the home with his family for many years. Although Joe died in 1917, his wife Caddy stayed in the home with the 3 children Laddle, Lonnie, Lee, and Lewis. Sadly, Laddle took his own life in one of the bedrooms by drinking potassium cyanide, and it was unknown for many years for why she did it. After her death, her mother Caddy Allen kept the room completely closed off from the rest of the house. When Caddy passed in 1954, the property was split into rental apartments, and soon after renters moved in, they reported hearing footsteps and moans from the bedroom where Laddle died. In 1985, new owners bought the house and opened the bedroom, and it still contained the bottle of cyanide in a closet. The house changed owners twice, and in 2007, Mark and Rebecca Spencer purchased the Allen Allen house and had a complete paranormal investigation done in 2008 because of the endless unexplainable instances. The investigators recorded over 40 voice phenomena and had their own paranormal experiences throughout their investigation. On August 22, 2009, Laddell's love letters were discovered in the attic floor. Over 90 letters detail her 1948 love affair, which ended with her taking her own life on Christmas night. After the owner Mark had experienced endless amounts of paranormal activity and discovering Laddell's love letters, he wrote a book called A Haunted Love Story. Nowadays, the home can be booked for tours explaining the history and the paranormal activity that goes on in the Allen house. During the Halloween season, it's open to the public from 6 to 11 p.m. for tours and paranormal investigators, and ghost lovers flock to hopefully experience Laddell's ghost that haunts the house to this day. In at number 2 we have Clayton House. The Clayton House is a historical treasure, but it's also one of the most haunted places in Arkansas. The home was originally built in 1852 by a man known as Mr. Sutton, and several years later William Henry Harrison Clayton purchased the house and renovated it, doubling it in size, transforming the style into Victorian Gothic Italianate. Mr. Clayton lived here from 1882 to 1897 with his wife along with their 7 children. The home still has old portraits of William and his wife Florence hanging on the wall and still had numerous priceless family belongings in the home. William had a twin brother, John K. Clayton, who was a US senator who had been mysteriously assassinated in 1873, and many believe his ghost is one that haunts the Clayton house. The second floor bedroom seems to have the most activity, and staff and visitors have reported hearing footsteps, boots stomping, and doors slamming, along with seeing apparitions. Music and singing have also been heard throughout the house. People who have visited this home have described seeing one ghostly apparition known as the Tall Man, who is dressed in all black, wears a hat, and walks angrily around. Another spirit often seen around the Clayton property is described as the woman in the brown dress. The woman is said to be peaceful and often just stands in one spot quite still. She is believed to be either Mrs. Clayton or possibly a nurse from the time the property was a hospital. The home became abandoned during the Civil War before it transformed into a Union Army hospital. There was a carpenter in 2007 who was doing some repairs on the home and took pictures before it started working, and when the pictures were developed, there was what appeared to be a woman in one of them. The home is now listed on the National Registry of Historic Places and holds tours of the home explaining the history and ghost stories. And finally, in at number 1 we have Cresent Hotel. The Crescent Hotel was built in 1886 and can be found in Eureka Springs. Due to the rich history, it has hundreds of tales of paranormal experiences and ghost sightings. The hotel has previously served as both a private girls' college and a cancer hospital, where Dr. Norman Baker claimed to have the cure for cancer. There are so many stories of ghost sightings, starting in room 218 where Michael, an Irish stonemason, who fell to his death when building the hotel. He's known to hang out in this room and is often seen. Theodora, a cancer patient who is known to be seen fumbling for her keys outside room 419, as well as tidying up for guests when they leave the room. Brecky, who passed away in the hotel, has been seen throughout the hotel, often bouncing a ball. Dr. John Fremont Ellis, the hotel's former in-house doctor in the 19th century, is often seen, or his cherry pipe tobacco is smelled near his former office, which is now room 212. Even the famed hotel cat Morris, who had been buried on the hotel property, is regularly seen and heard. A recurring phenomenon happens at a specific spot on the 3rd floor, where the hotel connects to an annex built onto the hotel when it was a hospital. The area has been said to be a portal to the other side. There have been multiple guests who have grown faint, with a few passing out frequently. Guests turning pale and falling against the wall and then sliding down. Many paranormal investigators believe that limestone has a special ability to absorb and release electromagnetic and psychic energies. Crescent Mountain, the hilltop the hotel sits on, is predominantly limestone. The massive thick stones used for the body of the hotel were also made of limestone, and these factors may contribute to the amount of paranormal activity the hotel guests experience. The Crescent Hotel is dubbed America's Most Haunted Hotel and has been on many TV shows like Ghost Hunters, Ghost Adventures, and Paranormal Witness. There have been an abundance of extraordinary experiences and have attracted the attention of paranormal investigators to study and research the hotel's supernatural activity. The hotel offers daily ghost tours to learn more about the ghost stories, sightings, and the history of the hotel.
Number 5. Havok Swamp. Already sounds pretty scary in itself. Something about swamps, you know what I mean? During the 17th century, the Havok Swamp was used as a fortress by the Wampanoag people, the predominant band of natives in the area, against invasion by the early British settlers. It played a landscape role in King Philip's War as a strategic base of which to launch assaults with nearby English settlements. During the 18th and 19th centuries, settlers deemed the swamp to be useless, barren land, and it didn't really do much besides sit there and just kind of take up space. They attempted to drain it and convert it into a profitable farmland, however nothing really grew. The natives of the region placed a much higher value on the swamp, however, for centuries. The first people had relied on hunting food there, riddled with fauna, and the swamp had gained an important legend and folklore among them as being a place where many things meet. They named it Hakomak, the Algonquin term meaning place where spirits dwell, and that's exactly what people say they do. Dwell there. What makes this swamp so haunted is the different purposes it was used for. A cesspool for bones of the fallen. Some places are just more susceptible to violence and death over the years, and that reputation of spirits lingering is what's so heavy and cold about this location. Much of the swamp served a dual purpose as a sacred burial ground as well. The Hakomak is occasionally referred to as the home of the Hobomok. The Wampanoag people worshipped and feared Hobomok, the chief deity of death and disease. Hobomok, composed of human souls of the dead, was known to congregate in areas like the Havok Swamp. Thus the term and lore stuck. Yep, just a giant mud monster swallowing souls. Charming. There are many stories and legends that have become associated with this swamp and are even connected to the number 1 on my list. It remains a place of mystery and fear and apparently good frog catching. Number 4. Lowell Cemetery. Lowell Cemetery is a cemetery located in Lowell, Massachusetts. Founded in 1841 and located on the banks of the Concord River, the cemetery is one of the oldest garden cemeteries in the country, making it a perfect place for violence and an eternity of soul searching. Many of Lowell's wealthy industrialists are buried here under lavish Victorian tombstones. Visitors have claimed that this is one of Massachusetts' most haunted cemeteries. What makes a haunted cemetery more haunted than another haunted cemetery, you know? Is there like a competition or like a quota or something? Just gotta keep the numbers up. What is it? I feel like every local claims their cemetery is the oldest and most haunted, and this brings me to our fair maiden here, the mysterious witch, Bonnie. A popular meeting place amongst the local teens at night for some scares and some screams, the statue of a woman with her arms outstretched on a rectangular tomb, her hands clutching a veil that falls down behind her body as though it were a cloak caught in the wind. Her eyes lay cold, staring at the heavens. Under her left eye, a black tear. Paranormal researchers have claimed that the statue holds more of an electromagnetic current, and strange things can be seen in front and around the statue, making it seem like it's moving from time to time. Creepy. There is local lore that if you leave a coin or ribbon on the statue, then you'll get good luck, and in return, if you steal or take the items from the statue, the haunting whispers of bad karma will follow. Although research shows that this gravesite holds no actual sinister history, the ghostly sightings surrounding it are a hotspot within the cemetery. I bet at night under the moonlight this woman could be very terrifying.
Number 3. Mount Weather Emergency Operations Center, Virginia. In a world that seems to constantly be on the brink of disaster, it is comforting to know that the US government has a safe location where the elite and powerful will be safe from destruction they most likely caused. Such is the purpose of the US Department of Homeland Security operated base located near Bluemont, Virginia. The Mount Weather Emergency Operations Center, otherwise known as the High Point Special Facility, has been in operation since the late 1800s, when it was used as a simple weather station. In 1928, the observatory building became President Calvin Coolidge's summer White House, before being used as a civilian public service facility where conscientious objectors could serve the government during World War II without having to go into conflict. In 1959, an underground facility was completed and designated Area B. The other buildings that were referred to as Area A became training facilities for the Federal Emergency Management Agency, or FEMA. Around this time, it became a relocation site for high-level civilian and military officials in the event of a national disaster, such as an attack or massive natural disaster. It plays a major role in many of the United States government's contingency plans for maintaining the continuity of government. It has a high-frequency radio system, which connects it to most federal public safety agencies, which allows the president to access and use the emergency alert system so that they can broadcast emergency alerts or warnings. An example of its use was on September 11th, 2001, when the majority of congressional leadership were taken from Washington by helicopter and evacuated to Mount Weather. The National Art Gallery has also developed a program that would have the country's most valuable paintings helicoptered over to the facility in the event of an attack, in order to make sure important cultural pieces are preserved in the event of an attack that would otherwise destroy them. Obviously, this site is off limits to all but the most high level of people, and it is not open for tourists. But if you are nearby and see a large group of frantic-looking officials arriving by helicopter, or you see a message on TV from the president being broadcast from this facility, be very afraid, as it means that something terrifying and horrible has or is about to occur. Number 2. Boblo Boblo Island Amusement Park, Ontario. North America has no shortage of amusement parks for families and thrill seekers alike to visit. The Canadian province of Ontario has several to choose from, including Canada's Wonderland, Great Wolf Lodge, and Splashtown Niagara. One theme park that you won't be able to buy a ticket for, however, is the Boblo Island Amusement Park, located on the island of Bois Blanc, just above the mouth of the Detroit River. The park was opened in 1898 and used a ferry system to service guests from Ontario and Detroit and bring them to the island, where they had a variety of attractions to keep them occupied and having fun. Some of these included the Falling Star, a log flume, a theater, a sky tower, a Ferris wheel, a zoo, a carousel, and a dance hall, financed by Henry Ford himself. It also had 3 roller coasters, the Screamer, the Nightmare, and the Sky Streak. It also had Boblo's scoot boats, which were essentially aquatic bumper cars. The park operated for many years before eventually closing down for financial reasons in late 1993. There are still ferries that operate in order to get island residents on and off the island, but the now abandoned amusement park has been declared off limits by the property owners. Of course, the dilapidated carousel building, dance pavilion, and sky tower have since proven to be too appealing for urban explorers to keep away from, and the eerie overgrown site still sees a variety of visitors. Like any good amusement park, it of course has a reputation for being haunted by a variety of ghosts. My personal favorite of the ghost stories is the story of Smiley the Magician. Back when the theater still operated and showed a variety of different performers, one of the most consistently booked performers of the 30s and 40s was a magician named Smiley Smilovich. Smiley was an old-school magician who had trained with Houdini in the late 20s and was known for his seemingly death-defying tricks. One of his most famous tricks was a metamorphosis trick, where he would put a trunk on stage, climb into it, lock it, and then have the trunk set on fire. He would escape through a trap door, the trunk would burn away, revealing that he had escaped, and the crowd would go wild. One day he was doing this trick as usual, but when he locked himself in the trunk, he had a heart attack and died. The trunk was set on fire, and the audience was left in terror as Smiley's body burned in front of them. Ever since then, Smiley's ghost would apparently haunt the theater, being sighted watching shows that were performed there, showing a special interest in magic shows. In the years since the park's closure, the occasional rumor of the magician being spotted has come up from the various urban explorers checking out the overgrown buildings. Would you ever be brave enough to explore Boblo Island Amusement Park? And if you did, would you be on the lookout for spectral magicians? Number 1. North Brother Island, New York. The North Brother Island is one of 2 small islands located in the East River of New York City. The island remained uninhabited until 1885, with the only trace of humanity being a small lighthouse that was erected in 1869. The island began seeing more use in 1885 when the Riverside Smallpox Hospital moved from Roosevelt Island to North Brother, when their mission expanded to treating and isolating victims of other quarantinable diseases such as typhoid, tuberculosis, and especially polio. In 1904, a steamship called the General Slocum was set ablaze, and over 1,000 people perished, either from the fire or from drowning while trying to escape, and ended up washing ashore on the island. One of the most famous residents at the hospital was Mary Mallon, otherwise known as Typhoid Mary, who was confined on the island for 20 years until her death in 1938, after having been declared a public health menace for infecting between 51 and 122 people while working as a cook. As public health measures like vaccines began to be adopted in the 30s and 40s, the need for a quarantine hospital lessened to the point where the hospital was closed. It was converted into housing for war veterans who were going to school in the city following World War II, before being converted into a rehabilitation facility for young people suffering from substance abuse issues. But it was closed in 1963 due to the cost of upkeep and the widespread corruption of the staff. In the years since, it was considered for a variety of purposes, including housing for the homeless and an extension of the jail at Rikers Island. But the danger of the unmarked manholes and the advanced dilapidation of the buildings, which are mostly collapsed and overrun by poison ivy, resulted in such ideas being abandoned. It was eventually decided that the site would serve as a bird sanctuary for herons and other wading shorebirds. Although many of the original 25 buildings are still standing in some shape or form, it has been made off limits to the public and is only available for supervised visits for those intending to go ashore for, quote, compelling academic and scientific purposes. With its history of confinement and death, perhaps it is best that this site has been deemed unfit for public visitation, although the history of the island is indeed compelling. What makes an enjoyable tourist destination for one will be very different for another. But even if any of these sites have struck your fancy, remember that the powers that be have decided that they are too dangerous, too private, or too frightening to allow normal civilians to set foot in them.
In at number 5, we have the King Opera House. The King Opera House in Van Buren was built in the late 19th century, but didn't get famous from the shows it hosted or its beautiful interior, but instead the Opera House is noted for its connection to a murder. actor, and there are rumors that it is haunted by the murdered actor. It all began with actor Charles Tolson, who was the owner of the Tolson Stock Company, which was a traveling acting troupe. The troupe had just finished a week of performances at the King Opera House in September 1903, and they were headed out of town to go to another performance. They headed to the train station, and when Tolson made his way to the ticket window, someone called out his name. Dr. William Parman, a well-known local doctor, emerged and shot Tolson with his revolver. Tolson was shot in the hip and the chest, and he was taken to the Fort Smith Hospital, but it was too late, and he died from his injuries. Dr. Parchman's motive for the incident was that he believed his 17-year-old daughter was in love with Tolson, was planning on running away with him, even though Tolson was married and his wife was a member of the acting troupe. Tolson knew Dr. Parchman and his daughter Allie, but there was no proof that he had any intention of eloping with the girl. Parchman was acting based on the information given to him by a vinegar salesman who may have had an interest in the young girl. Parchman was found not guilty of the murder despite there being multiple witnesses. Interestingly, both Allie and the vinegar salesman left town and were not present for the trial. It's said that Tolson's ghost haunts the King Opera House, which was the location of his last performance. Today, the Opera House is a contributing property to the Van Buren Historic District, listed on the National Register of Historic Places. It isn't currently open to the public, but is available to be rented out. In at number 4, we have Tollgate Mounds. The Tollgate Mounds is a famous historical site in Arkansas and is a National Historic Landmark, one of 4 in the Arkansas State Park system, and this park is the largest and most complex mound site in the state. Arkansas was once the home of a group of people referred to as the Plum Bayou culture by archaeologists and historians. Their existence in the area is a bit of a mystery. These people were not related to the Toltec tribes from Mexico, despite the site's name. The Plum Bayou culture also cannot be traced to any other group of people living in the area when the tribe was active. A total of 18 mounds have been identified in the area, all built between 650 and 1050 AD. One mound stands 49 feet high and another at 39 feet, with many smaller mounds surrounding it. The site was abandoned around 1050 AD and no remnants of the residents exist outside of the Toltec mounds. Today, the site is still an active archaeological site in the home of Toltec Mounds Archaeological State Park. As for hauntings at the site, if an entire culture disappearing without a trace isn't creepy enough, many visitors to the site have reported the appearance of lights or orbs near the mounds, seeing ghosts and hearing footsteps around the site at night. Many of these findings have been caught on camera and video, and so many paranormal investigators, ghost hunters, and haunting enthusiasts have confirmed there is activity in the area. Whether it's from the Lost Society or not, we may never know. The mounds are open daily for visitors, with tours available to learn more about the history and hauntings in the area. In at number 3, we have Mackinac Island. One of Michigan's most popular tourist destinations is also one of its most haunted, Mackinac Island. The small island sits on Lake Huron, covering almost 4 square miles of land between the upper and lower peninsulas of Michigan. The island was originally home to indigenous settlements long before European colonization. Seeing at least 2 battles during the War of 1812, it has been the resting ground of many tragic deaths, making it a prime location for hauntings and paranormal activity. In a part of the island, you will find the Grand Hotel. The area first served as a missionary school, but today it's known as a luxury hotel. Through investigators, there have been many reports of paranormal activity in the area, and it's known that the Grand Hotel is one of the hotspots for paranormal activity on the island. Legend has it that construction workers uncovered human remains while digging the hotel's foundation, with paranormal activity stories being recorded in the theatre, outside grounds, and in its rooms. The staff have also reported seeing a man in a top hat playing the bar's piano. Others see a woman in Victorian clothing who roams the halls, even getting into beds. Another paranormal hotspot is the Mission Point Resort, which was a moral realignment, a religious movement from the 1930s. The resort's popular ghost story is about a man named Harvey who died in the late 1960s. Supposedly, Harvey was dealing with a broken heart and ended his life behind the resort, not being found until 6 months later. Some people believe there's more to the story, that he was perhaps murdered. That being said, Harvey is often reported in the resort's theatre, where visitors have reported being pinched or poked. With the never-ending ghost stories and paranormal reports, the island is deemed the most haunted town per capita in the United States, with 16 haunted locations per 478 people. It is safe to say that there are some paranormal activities and ghosts lurking on the grounds of the island. Coming in at number 2, we have Holly Hotel. Due to the growing number of railroad passengers passing through the area, the hotel was built in 1891. Many staff, residents, and haunted historians will agree that the Holly Hotel is one of the most haunted buildings in the state of Michigan. Norman Gauthier, a professor of parapsychology who is also known as a world-famous ghost hunter, investigated the hotel in 1989 and concluded that the building is in indeed haunted by a great number of spirits. Throughout the years, the hotel survived 2 fires exactly 65 years apart. Many residents and guests of the hotel have talked about the weird feelings they got on the second floor of the hotel without us actually admitting to seeing ghosts. The inn's most famous ghost is said to be the former owner himself, Mr. Hurst. Hurst passed away in the 1920s, but many believe he just can't let go of his hotel. He is the most active ghost at the Holly Hotel and wasn't happy with the renovations that have been done to his inn. The rumour is if you see a man wearing a frock coat and top hat and smell cigars, you most likely have met the man himself. The other most common spirit would be with the former hostess, Nora Kane. According to the hotel, Nora's ghost is seen most often in the bar and back hallway. She has been heard playing the piano or softly singing a tune throughout the hotel, and her flowery perfumes can be faintly smelt when she is around. Those are only the 2 most common spirits of the Holly Hotel, though there are so many more encounters reported by visitors and ghost hunters. And finally, in at number 1 we have Benn Mansion. Found in Niles, Michigan sits an old mansion that was built in 1847. The home was constructed by a local whiskey distiller who sold it to an attorney, Strother Beeson, and that's why it was referred to as the Benn Mansion. Across the street of the mansion lies the family's private cemetery. Strother built the tomb across the street as a final resting place for his mother, and it wasn't too long afterward another family member joined the cemetery. Strother's son, born in 1969, tragically passed away, and a total of 12 family members are now entombed in the crypt. The ghost stories surrounding the Benn mausoleum are at least based on truth, if not completely true. Family legends about Harriet's odd behaviour were cited in newspapers over time, but not until much later, accompanied by reporting on unverifiable hauntings. Jumping to the late 1980s, when working to restore the mansion, the property owner reported hitting their head on a table in the hall, but something hitting them on the back. As well, they experienced instances of being pushed forward by an unknown force. Additionally, the doors would open and close behind them unexplainably. The renovated mansion is vacant now, but no one dares to buy it due to the many cases of hauntings and paranormal activity.
Number 5 on this list is the Seelbach Hotel. Seelbach Hotel is located in the heart of Louisville and has been there for quite some time. Virginia Travel Tips says, in 1905 the Seelbach Hotel in Louisville opened its doors. For more than a century, this exquisite historic hotel has functioned as one of Kentucky's most important historical landmarks. The hotel, on the other hand, is notorious for its ghostly activity. Patricia Wilson, the Lady in Blue, is one of the hotel's most famous sightings. She was a woman who had recently divorced her spouse and intended to meet him later at Seelbach to try and work out their differences. Unfortunately, her husband died in a car accident and never showed up. She was devastated by the loss and she died not long after that. As a result, guests notice a woman in a blue outfit strolling around the hotel. Other ghosts have been reported at the hotel, and they include a woman dressed in old, worn-out clothing who was approached by a staff member attempting to communicate with her, but then she disappeared. Most of the encounters with this woman have been tame, but there have been some that have gotten quite aggressive. Some teenagers were apparently making fun of her or doing something that they shouldn't have been doing, and she responded by literally clawing and scratching at one of them, leaving horrible marks behind. The victim also said that it felt as if she crawled into his brain and told him horrible secrets about himself that he'll never be able to forget. A hotel like this is supposed to be nice and relaxing, but based on what I've read, I don't know if that's going to be the experience you get at Seelbach. Number 4 on this list is the Talbot Tavern. Really too bad that this place is haunted, because it would have been a pretty nice spot to get a brew if it wasn't. Virginia Travel Tips says, built in 1778, the Talbot Tavern is located in Bardstown, Kentucky. Currently, the Haunted Kentucky Tavern serves as both a restaurant and a 5-room B&B, and it's known for being haunted. A former accountant recalls coming across a man in a long coat strolling across the top floor. He then turned to face her and began laughing uncontrollably. Another famous hotel resident was the Lady in White, who forced a couple to flee the hotel in the middle of the night since she was hovering over them while sleeping. Many workers and visitors to the residence have related accounts such as orbs floating around the rooms, flashes of lights without cameras being seen, objects moving on their own, and doors opening and closing when no one's in the building. I, for one, am not trying to wake up to a ghost just hovering over me, guys. Honestly, it might give me a heart attack and, well, I'd never wake up again. This place is weird because no one really knows why it's as haunted as it is, but there's no doubt that it's teeming with paranormal energy. Pick a different place to go get a drink if you're in Kentucky.
Number 3. The Old State Penitentiary, 1885. The Old State is located 15 miles south of central Santa Fe and is an active men's maximum security prison that was built in 1885. Acting as a prison system for the US, the prison saw 3 massive riots in its entirety, including 1922, 1953, and the worst and most bloody riot of all, 1980. One of the worst prison riots in American history. It's presumed to be the reason behind its haunting reputation. On February 2nd, 1980, several inmates initiated a riot which led to the inmates gaining control over the prison for a full day and a half. Unfortunately, at the time, post-70s, the prison was overcrowded, underfunded, and riddled with untrained, fresh-faced security guards with the rampant need for excess bodies due to the overgrowing inmate count. After escaping and organizing this event, the cellmates then tortured 12 prison guards and brutally murdered 33 other inmates. These riots soon became medieval in nature, gruesome, and truly evil. The most famous area for paranormal sightings can be heard and seen around cell block 4. Men here were brutally butchered, dismembered, decapitated, and some even hung up on the cells and burned alive. This section of the prison was closed in 1998 and is now referred to as Old Main. As if that history isn't dark enough, witnesses and researchers claim that there's a ton of spirits that roam this prison. Dark figures and ghostly shadows have been seen roaming the cells and halls, unexplainable slamming of cell doors, men's voices, strange noises, and even echoed screams can be heard at this location. This is why I don't even jaywalk, people. Stay a couple nights at this haunted prison looking at axe marks on the ground? Yeah, no, I'm getting my phone out right away. I know exactly who I'm gonna call. Yeah. Number 2, the Amador Hotel. Located at 251 West Amador Street at the corner of Water Street and Las Cruces, which translates to the Crosses, an area in New Mexico spanning as far back as the settled early 1800s, was thought to be an early mass gravesite for the amount of crosses present in the city. The Amador Hotel has stood serving the community in multiple ways over the years, including a courthouse, a post office, a bank, hotel, and even a county office center. Yeah, can I get 2 stamps, please? Thanks. Built in 1866, the Amador Hotel is a popular Las Cruces ghost tour, and some of the rooms were even used as jail cells. Hey, you're grounded for 15 years to life, I don't know. The courthouse was completed in 1885. Amador added another story to the remaining structure, and Amador Hall became a community center where people conversed in drinking and in storytelling. During tours, guests have reported seeing shadowy figures lurking in the hallways, numerous cold spots, flashlights turning on and off by themselves, and having their arms even touched or scratched. Oh yeah, that's it. Just a little to the left. That's perfect. Some even say it's the work of a little ghost girl named Annie, who frequently visits the room on the 2nd floor, giggling. Like, giggling is great and all until like a 200-year-old spirit giggles right in your face. Like, what is still funny? This is terrifying. Joke must have been that good. Little ghost girls? Yeah, that's the scariest ghosts imaginable. 100%. The Amador Hotel ghost tour starts at 8 p.m. and during a visit through the tour of the grounds, history and ghost hunting begins. I'm a strict matinee ghost hunter myself, only during the day, or never. Or like around brunch, that's like perfect, nice and sunny. And coming in at number 1, Double Eagle Restaurant. If you're heading down to Mesilla, New Mexico this weekend and enjoy burgers and ghost stories, well, then the Double Eagle Restaurant is a must stop for you. Known not only for the world's largest green pepper chili burger, this blast from the past decorated head to toe in its luxurious upscale Victorian decor is now the home to 2 prominent and active restaurants, the Double Eagle and Pepper's Cafe. Alright, here we go, let's dive in. Possibly the world's most haunted restaurants, originally owned by the Mace family, owning one of the leading and most lucrative import-export businesses in Santa Fe, was Senor and Senora Mace. Senora Mace expected only the best for her eldest son, Armando. Mothers and their sons, right? Always imaginarily wiping something off their faces. Come here, come, just, there's more. There is grim history here, involving 2 forbidden star-crossed lovers and a pair of sewing scissors. Thank you. The Double Eagle Restaurant is not only home for great food, beautifully handcrafted cocktails, but also home to a double homicide gruesome murder, in which these victims' souls would seem to be trapped within these walls forever. Armando, son and heir to his parents' business, falling head over heels in love with the family's household servant named Enos. Although Enos reciprocated such feelings about Armando, their relationship had to remain a secret due to Armando's mother's strict ordinance and the difference in the teenager's social and political positions. When Sonora Mays discovered this relationship, she demanded that it end at once and banished Enos from her home indefinitely. It is said that one day Sonora Mays came home, unexpectedly interrupting the lovers, mid-swoon, entranced by their love as she grabbed her sewing scissors from the basket on the patio and attacked Enos, stabbing and killing her. As she prepared to strike again, Armando, her son, threw his body in front of Enos and was stabbed instead. Yeah, that's some Romeo and Juliet stuff there, people. The murders were held in the famous Carlotta Salon Room, which can be visited at any time. A heavily requested stop where spooky goers can see a newspaper article titled Young Lover Ghosts on display, as well as an array of pictures taken of the young ghost lovers together over the years. That's terrifying! Here's the room, here's what happened, here's some proof. That's all I need to know. I've made my mind up. For never was a story of more woe than this of Enos and her Armando. And I tried to end on somewhat of a happy note. Love lasts forever, and that's what I'm taking from this.
In at number 5, we have Palmer House Hotel. This hotel is not only considered the most haunted place in Minnesota, but to some, it's considered the most haunted place in America. Located in Sauk Center, the hotel has been visited by paranormal activity investigators from across the country. Recently, the ghost hunter from the Travel Channel, Ghost Adventures, even investigated the hotel. A brothel that went by the name of the Sauk Center House occupied the current grounds of the Palmer Hotel, but the Sauk Center House burned down in 1900, and the Palmer was built in its place the following year. The Palmer Hotel was established in 1901 and is notorious for its permanent ghost residence. The most reported ghost in the hotel is named Lucy, who resides in room 17. Legend has it that Lucy was an adult worker that frequented the past building of the Sauk Center House. Though Lucy endured a terrible accident of losing her life at the hands of one of her clients. Even though this happened in the building, the Palmer Hotel can't seem to get rid of the spirit of Lucy. The ghost of Lucy is said to dislike men by slamming the room door of male guests. Some reports her slamming the room door so hard it rattles the artwork on the wall and aggressively drops the temperature. During a recent investigation, a Chicago ghost hunting outfit allegedly recorded a temperature of -1 degrees Fahrenheit during their stay. Additionally, there was a couple staying at the hotel that reported a horrifying ghost encounter in room 17, where the wife woke up in the night and suddenly saw a lanky man dressed in 1920s clothing standing at the foot of the bed. Other active areas include the bar in room 22, home to a spirit named Raymond, rumored to be Lucy's manager. One employee of the Palmer House Hotel has confessed that their favorite paranormal experience is when guests complain about how noisy the people above them are, even though they are on the top floor. The ghost encounters and paranormal activity is so frequent at the Palmer Hotel that the current owner, Kelly Freezer, didn't believe in ghosts, but this changed when she became the owner of the hotel. In at number 4, we have the Soap Factory. The Soap Factory was at its peak during the soap boom of the 1880s, though now the factory has been left abandoned. The Soap Factory is one of the oldest factories in Minneapolis. While the process of making soap required lots of fats, lie in extremely hot temperatures, therefore it wasn't the most glorious or safest workplace in its day. Furthermore, the fats came from animal carcasses, thousands of them. The flow of blood and skin leaked into the Great River next door in the turn of the century. The building's smell of flesh made it a hot spot for stray dogs that the city paid to be rounded up and sent to the end of their life. If that's not creepy enough, there are legends regarding malpractice taking place at the factory, with animal fats from local restaurants taken to be made into soap. And there were also rumors of child labor at the factory, but whatever you choose to believe, there is no denying that the site contains negative energy. Now the basement of the abandoned factory is used for haunted tours. The tour is so scary in fact that guests have to sign a waiver and have to be 18 to go on the tour.
Number 3. The USS Salem. Planes, trains, and automobiles. Well, almost. A big boat. The USS Salem, a heavy cruiser built for World War II in 1945, was originally built for action. Its bold, aggressive architecture was one of the last, as it was more of a bluff to its opponents than actually a hero of war. In May 1949, War Departments handed the Salem's helm to Captain J.C. Daniel himself. The ship was built and updated with what was then the latest military tech and weapons, and it was meant to strike fear in whomever whomever or whatever was in her way. Although the ship wasn't used in any action during World War II, it acted as a flagship, training operation, and main purpose as a threat to the naval enemy. It wasn't until the USS Salem had responded to the 1953 Ionian earthquake, or also known as the Great Kefalonia earthquake, as it hit the southern Ionian islands of Greece on August 12th, devastating the entire area. The USS Salem landed on Greek shores and acted as an improvised hospital and morgue, giving it its famous name, the Sea Witch. The ship was decommissioned shortly after its rescue and lays in Boston's harbor as a tourist attraction from all of its dark history. Some of the paranormal activities that arise on the ship include the Burning Man, who smells of rank death and can be seen in the mess hall where the bodies have been stored. Another famous apparition on the ship is the ghost girls who lurk the halls of the ship. Little ghostly figures can be seen and felt on the legs of tour goers. Some people claim that the ship is even home to hellhounds, an aggressive pack of ghostly creatures that roam the ship growling and scratching at closed doors. Yeah, the next time my dog scratches at my door, she's going up for adoption, I'm sorry. Number 2, the Lizzie Borden House. This quaint bed and breakfast located at 230 2nd Street is home to one of America's most haunted and mysterious homes. The Lizzie Borden House gets its haunt from an unsolved murder of Lizzie Borden in 1892. One of the most infamous true crime figures known for her murdering of her father and stepmother with several blows to the head with a hatchet. Oof, ouch. Although acquitted, the killings remain unsolved to this day. This case earned notoriety and much that the popular local children's rhyme had been linked to this death. Lizzie Borden took an axe and gave her mother 40 whacks. When she saw what she had done, she gave her father 41. That is horrible. On August 4th, 1892, Lizzie's stepmother of 27 was struck 19 times while her father Andrew was hit 11. Although Lizzie Borden was acquitted and found not guilty, the dark history draws in crowds every night for its nightly tour of the premises. The Lizzie Borden room, the infamous room where all of the murders took place, is the most requested and most popular for paranormal overnighters. And not only can you enjoy a lovely inclusive breakfast to yourself, but the nightly house tour, ghost tour, and ghost hunt attracts fans of horror every night of the year. Yeah, that's terrifying. And there's a jingle to it. I don't like that at all. And coming in at number 1, the Salem Witch Trials. We can't talk about haunted places in Massachusetts if we're not going to bring up the witch trials. And I'm not talking about Sabrina the Teenage Witches, or anything of cute of that nature. These famously documented witch trials need no introduction, and unfortunately lays way to one of the most horrific events based in truth. The site of mass hysteria and hangings of supposed witches took place here and occurred in colonial Massachusetts between 1692 and 1693. More than 200 people were accused of practicing witchcraft, or better known back then as the devil's magic, and 20 were ultimately executed. Eventually, the colony admitted the trials were a mistake and compensated the families of those convicted. Okay, yeah, sorry. I just thought when you sneezed, you didn't say bless you, so I already don't like you, so I figured you were a witch. I'm really sorry. Since then, the story of the trials has become famous in paranoia and injustice, and it continues to baffle researchers to this day. We all know the famous play written by American playwright Arthur Miller in 1953, The Crucible, depicting the mass hysteria and drama during these trials. This was the perfect time if you didn't like someone that a strategic and untimely sinister accusation led to the demise of thy neighbor. I saw Sarah Good with the devil. I saw Goody Osborne with the devil. Who else don't I like? I saw Bridget Bishop with the devil. Abigail. End of Act 1. Since the start of the trials and hysteria in North America, other European countries shortly followed with their own mass witch hunts, resulting in somewhere between 40,000 and 60,000 tried and executed for witchcraft. That's a lot of broomsticks. The Salem Witch Trials of Salem, Massachusetts is still one of the world's biggest hotspots for mystery and paranormal story.
Number 5 on this list is the Molly Brown House. If you live in Denver, then there is no way that you aren't familiar with this haunted place. Thrillist says you've no doubt heard of the Molly Brown House and likely passed it on the street once or twice too. Molly Brown was a notable member of Denver's elite and perhaps known best for being a Titanic survivor, and despite despite allegedly living a relatively happy life, visitors to the museum and staff have reported quite a bit of strange happenings. Some have smelled what's believed to be husband J.J. Brown's pipe, or have witnessed lights off and on the fritz, and staff have reported furniture being seemingly rearranged. Sometimes, figures can even be seen roaming the house. A visit is worth it alone for the history, but the potential for getting a bit spooked or walking into a cold spot is definitely an added bonus. We once again have one of those locations where no one has any idea why it's haunted, it just is. Maybe it's the connection to the Titanic that has got this place acting funky. Obviously, that was a very unnatural occurrence and took the lives of tons of people in a very sad way. So I could believe that the Titanic and the survivor of the Titanic plays some role into why this place is haunted the way that it is. Good news is that this isn't the worst haunting that you can run into. Like, yes, you will get a little scared for sure. You might smell something funny, or have a ghost pull something on you, or even maybe have small valuables go missing. But ultimately, you probably shouldn't be dragged to the underworld here by some shadow demon or anything like that. So I guess if you were to visit any place on this list, then this one wouldn't be the worst. Just be prepared for what's coming, because if you aren't, then it could leave you with some serious mental trauma. Number 4 on this list is Phantom Canyon Road. You need to be very careful on this road because there is a good chance you could suffer a serious crash if you aren't. Thrillist says a haunted road is one thing, but a haunted road in Colorado means you're likely on the edge of a mountain and at some serious elevation. Phantom Canyon Road is a detour off the Gold Belt Tour byway connecting Cripple Creek and Florence, and was originally the railroad for that route. As you drive along, you can clearly see the ghost towns of Wilbur, Adelaide, and Glenbrook, and legend has it that the reason for Phantom Canyon's name is credited to sightings of a man wearing a prison uniform walking along the tracks in the 1890s. The man supposedly had been executed at the Colorado State Penitentiary a few days earlier. So yeah guys, you better have your wits about you, because if you don't, this ghost might come out and startle the crap out of you, and then the next thing you know, you're gonna be face deep into a tree somewhere. It also just adds to the horror ambiance that you're driving past several ghost towns along the way. Like, of course, they just had to be on the side of the road as you're also getting stalked by this ghost prisoner. No one really knows what this prisoner wants with you, but let's face it, I can't imagine it's good. My dude was executed back in the day, so for one, what he did was probably pretty bad to warrant a punishment like that, and then secondly, he literally got executed, and I can only guess that his ghost probably isn't too pleased about that. Y'all need to be especially careful if you're driving down this road, because at any point this guy could pop out.
In at number 3 we have First Avenue. Located in downtown Minneapolis, the building, which is now home to this nightclub, has a rounded front, is painted black, and has white stars on its sidewalls with the names of many of the musical talents who have done shows in one of these 3 event rooms found inside. Before it was famous for being a nightclub, the First Avenue was a Greyhound depot. The First Avenue legend has to do with the building's former self, the Great Art Deco Greyhound Bus Center that opened on 7th Street in 1937. The story goes that a young woman went to the station to meet her boyfriend who was returning home from World War II. When she was informed that he had died in combat, she ran into the restroom and ended her life due to heartbreak. In recent years, multiple First Avenue staffers have reported seeing a ghost in the washroom. The ghost has been reportedly described as a woman, always in a green army jacket, and sometimes seen dancing at the club along with other ghosts. Legend says that many homeless people died in the bus station as well, and they can be seen dancing with the women. There have been reports of another spirit haunting the nightclub. The staffers nicknamed this spirit Slippy, while this particular ghost is said to make a balloon appear from nowhere, which then floats up and down the staircase on its own. Dave Schrader, paranormal investigator, visited First Avenue to assess the paranormal activity in the building multiple times and has concluded that the building is indeed haunted by many spirits, indicating that the record room is the most active area of the site. While DJs that have played at the venue have reported frequently hearing strange noises through their headphones, such as growls, voices, and screams, other performers report their equipment being pushed off stage with no explanation. In at number 2 we have Schmidt Brewery. Schmidt Brewery became the largest in Minnesota by 1860, producing 1,200 barrels annually and shipping them as far south as Tennessee. It was restructured as the St. Paul Brewing Company in 1898 before being sold to Jacob Schmidt soon after in 1900. Since its opening in 1884, many ghost hunters have visited the Schmidt Brewery to experience some of the many rumored paranormal activities. The brewery has been the site of many constant unexplainable instances, from fires to people losing their lives to terrible accidents. This place has seen a lot of scary sights. While the victims of these events linger around to haunt the grounds of the brewery, even though the building is now used as an artist's loft, that doesn't take away the scary history of the Schmidt Brewery. While most of the ghosts that haunt the grounds of the old brewery have to do with ordinary brewery workers dying in terrible accidents, in 1896 2 workers lost their lives in an explosion. Furthermore, in 1902 a worker fell down an unmarked elevator shaft. Additionally, in 1904 Matthew Colo, a worker whose job was to light gas lamps in the brewery, lost his life from inhaling flames. Schmidt Brewery has been a St. Paul haunt since 1855 for more than a couple of reasons, when owner Jacob Schmidt took down the original North Star Brewery sign, replacing it with his namesake, Jacob Schmidt Brewing Company. The entire brewery burned down a year later in 1900. Plenty of other bad luck would also follow on the grounds of the brewery, suspected due to the tragic death of many workers of the brewery. And finally, in at number 1 we have Four Pals Restaurant. Known as the most haunted restaurant in Minnesota, the Four Pal has a tragic story. Located in St. Paul, Four Pals was a high-end restaurant located in Irvine Park, and the restaurant is a beautiful Victorian mansion. Sadly though, the restaurant is now permanently closed. The dark stories about Four Pals Restaurant hint that the historic mansion is seriously haunted. As the story goes, back in the late 1800s, Joseph Four Pal had an affair with the mansion's maid, Molly. It was not long before his wife discovered this relationship and love for Mary. Therefore, the wife became extremely jealous of the servant and assigned Molly to do chores that would keep her away from the bedrooms and away from Joseph. Molly became pregnant and Joseph ended the affair, but Molly was so distraught about the whole situation that she ended her life. According to reports, she ended her life in the attic. Joseph was upset when he heard the news about Molly that he figured he could not stay in the house where his beloved died. One day he went out for a walk and ended his life as well. Since then, restaurant guests and employees have reported creepy sightings of a woman dressed in 1800s attire, lights turning off and on by themselves, and strange noises coming from the attic. In one case, the disturbances were so chaotic that it led to an investigation by the St. Paul police, whose canine dog refused to enter the attic. It is said that Joseph and Molly both haunt Four Pals, but many guests have said Molly is more active spirit. People say they have seen the two walking around the dining area, but Molly bangs on walls and smashes glasses. Some people say they can smell her lavender perfume. That being said, Mr. Four Pal is also sometimes seen, and his ghost has been reported wearing a dark waistcoat, silk vest, pinstripe trousers, and a derby hat. He can be seen going to the basement, at which time the lights flicker and shuffling noises are heard. He roams the house and has been caught on film many times. The former staff of the restaurant have also reported on many occasions when they would go floor by floor turning off lights as they closed down for the night. Then when the staff members get in their cars to leave, they'll notice the top floor light is on. Nevertheless, if the restaurant is haunted, the story of Mr. Four Pal and Molly is one of the most devastating to date.
And coming in at number 5 we have the Houghton Mansion. Built in the 1890s in North Adams, Massachusetts, for the mayor himself, Albert Charles Houghton. This neoclassical revival style mansion sits on 172 Church Street. A family man, Albert was the president of Arnold Print Works, a prominent textile factory in North Adams. His wife, Cordelia, daughter Mary, and himself had owned and lived on the property right up until the fatal car accident which took the lives of the family in 1914. On an early summer morning, Albert and his family, accompanied by another family, Dr. and Mrs. Dutton and their daughter, and of course the family chauffeur himself, Mr. Witters, had decided to head out into the countryside for a leisurely drive. A drive that ultimately took their lives. Unfortunately for everyone on that August 1st morning, after a steep turn, the car lost control and proceeded to screech off the road, resulting in a rolling fatal wreck. All the women in this tragedy losing their lives, with the men barely surviving from the multitude of injuries. On August 11th, just 10 days after the accident, without his wife and daughter, Albert mysteriously died in the home from what doctors think was a broken heart. It is said that 3 ghosts haunt the Houghton Mansion, including Albert himself, Albert's daughter Mary, and the driver, Mr. Witters. The mansion remained with the Houghton family until 1926, when Albert's daughter Florence and her husband sold the building to the Freemasons. This is when the spookiness really started happening. Through its multitude of use throughout the years, additions to this historic site were added on by the Masons, using it for ritual and spiritual purposes, making this story even weirder. Over the years, there have been countless paranormal witnesses claiming that the ghosts roaming the halls of the basement, Mr. Witters himself, guilt-ridden with the responsibility of the crash, and Mr. Witters took his own life shortly after returning home with injuries, and residents that have stayed at the site have claimed that the manly figure aimlessly rummaging through the basement is the driver himself. Among these claims have another spirit lurking in Mary's bedroom. It is said that overnighters have witnessed multiple bright lights and auras flying around the bedroom in the middle of the night. I wouldn't even step foot into this house, let alone set up camp and spend the night. No way. The Houghton Mansion remains a tourist attraction and hotspot for paranormal goers worldwide, and to this day is one of the most haunted and mysterious sites in all of Massachusetts. Number 4. The Hoosick Tunnel. The Hoosick Tunnel, from the Algonquin word place of stones and the Mohawk word forbidden, is a 4.75 mile active railroad tunnel in western Massachusetts that passes through the Hoosick Range, an extension of Vermont's Green Mountains, and runs from Deerfield River in the town of Florida to the city of North Adams. The construction began in 1815 and ending in 1875 with a budget of $2 million, at the time the largest tunnel ever constructed, and it was later the result of taking lives of over 200 men during its construction entirety, earning it the nickname from locals, the Bloody Pit. This haunted, barren, 5-mile, completely enclosed stretch was subject to multiple accidents and deaths over the years, giving the tunnel its haunting history and reputation of being cursed itself. With the word forbidden, did the Mohawks know something that the workers didn't? Essentially, this cold, underground, pitch-black hole became one of America's strangest gravesites, resulting in everything from mysterious gas leaks, dynamite explosions, roofs collapsing, and even mechanic failures resulting in a mass flood. For the past decades, there have been numerous paranormal activity witnesses who have documented strange events, from police officers to the freight conductors themselves. Some of the reports over the last 100 years included numerous farmers and wagons ending up in different areas of the railroad, missing hours of time. The farmers had claimed that when spending time around the railroad and its tracks, that memory and confusion would always set in. Some residents have claimed that they have even been chased out of the tunnel by an unexpected freight train chugging along aggressively through the tunnel like a bat out of hell, and then vanishing. Numerous ghostly figures resembling workers roam the dark tunnel, and if that isn't scary enough, some people, including hearing the echoes and screams of even the workers who were buried alive under the rock, still holding their tools, or even seeing ghostly figures in pumping chambers where numerous men tirelessly making rafts not to drown. The Hoosick Tunnel remains one of the most visited and haunted places, marking it just one of the sites you'll probably never find me at. Just in 2020, the tunnel was yet again subject to a mysterious collapse, resulting in months of repair. Yeah, I say stop fixing it and just let it be.
Number 3 on this list is the Kentucky State Penitentiary. We always got to include the creepy jail in one of these lists, guys, and this is Kentucky's. Virginia Travel Tips says the Kentucky State Penitentiary is situated near the Tennessee border on a sharp bend in the Cumberland River. In the 1800s, a maximum security jail was built there. It is a gorgeous place from afar, but up close, it is a death and ghost machine, according to a local author and paranormal investigator. Thousands of men have been executed in the prison's electric chair known as Old Sparky. During his death row cell inspections in the late 1980s, a guard had a terrible incident where no one stayed. He was greeted by a prisoner who was reading the Bible. When he returned to his office, he asked about the prisoner's meal, only to discover that no one was in that cell. When he returned to the cell, he discovered that it was empty except for a small Bible on the floor. Yeah, kinda weird. More strange occurrences were recorded around the institution, with many reporting seeing a reflection of an inmate who attempted to shock them. Okay, so honestly guys, I want to take this as seriously as possible, but Old Sparky? Like, imagine dying in a thing called Old Sparky. Like, I think it's meant to electrocute people, but why does the killing chair sound so cute? Kinda sounds like something that you name your dog, not a murder weapon. Anyways, Old Sparky has certainly done its job though, and now the place is super haunted. Most of the prisons we talk about on this channel you can go visit if you like, because they're all typically abandoned. That's not the case with this one though. The Kentucky State Penitentiary is still fully operational and has tons of prisoners in it. Not only do these people have to chill in jail, but it just so happens that their jail is also haunted. Number 2 on this list is Mammoth Cave. So we actually spoke about Mammoth Cave on this channel before in our series about top 5 terrifying caves where evil awaits. So If that interests you, then go check it out. It made that list because it was super haunted, and naturally it has to make this one as well. It is, as you'd expect, located in Kentucky. It is the biggest cave in the state by far, which is why it's named Mammoth Cave. Most of the cave has been unexplored, which is kind of nuts considering we've already seen about 400 miles of it up until this point. This has been an area of interest to people for thousands of years. Back 4,000 years ago, it's believed that people used this cave to bury their dead. This was the first encounter this cavern saw of death, but it definitely wasn't the last. After the War of 1812, these caves were sold off and used as a place to mine salt. The workers of these mines were slaves and oftentimes were worked to death down there. After the salt had been mined, this place functioned as a spot for sick tuberculosis victims to go. Obviously, this created more death in this place and just contributed to what is a very haunted area now. Today, we get an array of ghostly apparitions popping up to people. Ghosts from all the way back 4,000 years ago have been seen, still lingering and clinging on to this cavern. People have seen the visions of slaves calling out for help and ghosts of sickly individuals as well. H.P. Lovecraft, one of the most famous fantasy horror writers, was inspired by this cave. Anything that inspired that guy is probably a spot that you want to avoid. And finally, number 1 on this list is Nada Tunnel. What is it about tunnels that's just so creepy? It feels like there are a few locations in the world that seem to attract paranormal activity, and tunnels are definitely right up there. Virginia Travel Tips says Nada Tunnel, also known as the Gateway to Red River Gorge, is located in Powell County, Kentucky. Works of a one-lane tunnel on a two-way road began in 1910 and concluded in 1911. Drills and dynamite were used to rip through the limestone rock during construction, and one worker died while attempting to dissolve a stick of frozen dynamite by placing it next to the fire, which, you know, resulted in the dynamite exploding. As a result, the man's spirit is claimed to haunt the Kentucky Tunnel. Others allege that the location is haunted as a result of a climber who died in this region. These incidents are linked to the mythology of a green orb appearing in front of the tunnel. If you plan to enter the tunnel, keep in mind that it only fits one automobile at a time, therefore check for other car headlights before proceeding. This is one of the coolest haunted places in Kentucky for the sake of it being engulfed in nature. So it may look really cool, but the haunted nature of this spot makes me think that it should be avoided. Man, imagine literally getting blown up by a stick of dynamite. Like, that might actually be the worst. Granted, my dude did stick the dynamite literally right next to a fire, so I feel like he might have brought this one on himself a little bit. I'm not really sure how the climber would have died in this tunnel, but you gotta imagine that he screwed up if he was climbing in a tunnel. Either way, the spot is definitely riddled with these spirits, and they manifest themselves as this glowing green orb. Now, there haven't been too many reports of this thing being super dangerous, but it is definitely creepy to say the least. Locals don't really travel down this pathway for fear of the orb and what it could potentially do to them. Also, on a total side note, I just want to bring up the fact that this is a one-way tunnel on a two-lane road. Like, how dangerous is that, guys? What if it's foggy or something and I can't see all the way down the tunnel to the other car? That is literally the dumbest road design I have ever heard of. Maybe the legend was just created by the locals because they know how dangerous this freaking tunnel is. Regardless of what it is, I recommend staying away.
Kicking off the list at number 5, the Mission of San Miguel, 1610. The birthplace and historic site, the original San Miguel Church was most likely built shortly after the founding of Santa Fe in 1610 and is claimed to have been the first ever church built in America. Churches are already creaky and creepy, then this is the oldest one in the States? Okay, here we go. This church was built right across the Santa Fe River in the area referred to as the Barrio de Analco, which was inhabited mainly by the native population for the past 1,000 years. The San Miguel mission was first mentioned in writing in 1628, indicating it was in use at that point as both a mission and a school. Although intended as a mission, the Spanish also used it as their parish church until the parroquia was completed. The original San Miguel church was probably much smaller than the structure present, with more of a rectangular apse, a slight slightly raised sanctuary, and a simple front elevation with no towers at all. The surviving foundations were excavated and closely researched by Bruce Ellis and Stanley Stubbs in 1955. Although the present building dates from 1710, it has undergone a multitude of significant structural changes since its infamous riot in which partially destroyed the building during the Pueblo Revolt of 1680. This was an uprising of mostly the indigenous Pueblo peoples against the Spanish colonizers in Santa Fe de Nuevo Mexico. The Pueblo Revolt killed around 400 Spaniards and drove the remaining 2,000 settlers out of the province, which is where the creepy stuff kinda sits around. Since its construction, there have been over 300 years of ghostly apparitions seen at these ruins. You can never really pinpoint a specific person at this location, but there are numerous sightings that have been documented over the years, ranging from ghost horses, dragging sounds, and loud bangs resembling warfare. The San Miguel Chapel still stands after 400 years due to its local, national, and international community that has supported its preservation and history. Everybody chipping in. I love it. Little TLC. I bet you this is also where you see ghosts on different floors that used to be there or behind walls that don't even exist anymore. Like, are they bound by these structures forever? They're just like... Forever? Number 4. La Posada Hotel, 1882. Located at 330 East Palace Avenue in Santa Fe, New Mexico, La Posada Hotel is more than 100 years old, finishing construction in 1884. A lively and prominent spot for celebrities in town during the 1900s, it was originally built to be the home of Mr. Abraham and Mrs. Julia Stabb. Perfect last name for the start of something scary. Stabb. A prominent businessman and a German immigrant, Abraham had constructed this beautiful Grand French Second Empire estate ready to make a life working with his brother Zodak in business and eventually settling down in this historic town, with the mansion acting as a social hub for both the business and celebrity events. It is said that the Stabbs have 7 children, one of which died at birth, and which in fact led Miss Stabb to a depressed self-exile state, dying at the age of only 52. The mansion was converted into a hotel in 1936, shortly after the rubble of the Depression had cleared, and it is said that Julia herself haunts the rooms of La Posada Hotel. Guests have made claims to hear voices in vacant bedrooms, lights flickering on and off, and even doors slamming in the middle of the night. Voices saying things like, "I'm in here." It's never just like casual and calm, like, "Oh yeah, just leave the door open, I'm in here, come on in." It's always a creepy whisper in here like, "I'm in here." Too creepy. La Posada Hotel Resort and Spa still remains one of New Mexico's most haunted hotels and is active and encourages overnighters to check out the Julia Stabb package, which involves a ghostly tour, history lesson of the grounds, a lovely dinner away from the kids, and a day done right by the pool or spa. Unfortunately, I won't be taking them up on the Stabb package at any time soon. Not at all. No chance. I hear one thing in the middle of the night and I'm out, and I'm up quickly. 12 seconds flat. I'm just like... Number 3. Boston Common. Most common fact about the Common: one of the most haunted places in Boston. That rhymed really weird, didn't it? If you're out for a walk and feel the need to brush up on your American history, then you can be sure to either see the ladies by the trees or the Patriot men rushing the battlefront. Well, what's left behind from them at least. The Boston Common had a multi-purpose identity through the centuries. Originally as a farm, and then trading grounds for the British and American military, the Common was used as a camp during the American Revolutionary War. 20 minutes to load these old muskets and a lot of people dying. It was also used for public hangings up until 1817, most of which were from the large oaks, which were eventually all replaced with gallows in 1769. These grounds held weight during the witch trials and made a perfect open concept park that a spectacle could be enjoyed at. These people were sick. This place has seen its fair share of violence. The 350-year-old park is full of graves, ghosts, and gallows. It's almost impossible to know just how many bodies lay underneath the park, like a cesspool of unmarked graves from many different eras. Most buried here were low class, sick, or died in battle. Oh, and of course were hanged in front of the public. This place is home to many dark shadows, cold spots, and the occasional smell of gunpowder. Next time you're in Boston, swing by one of America's oldest and fullest cemeteries and see if you can see anything for yourself. Number 2. The Danver State Hospital. The Danver State Hospital, or also known as the Danver State Insane Asylum, was a psychiatric hospital located in Danvers, Massachusetts. It was built in 1874 and opened in 1878 on the isolated site in rural Massachusetts, which, fun fact, the judge who preceded the Salem witch trials lived on. That's bad karma already, isn't it? Despite being included in the National Registry for Historical Places in 1984, the majority of the building was demolished in 2007. At a cost of $1.5 million at the time, the hospital originally consisted of 2 main center buildings with housing for the administration, with 4 radiating wings on each side. The outermost wards were reserved for the most hostile patients. This was a prominent location where medications were being tested by the government, and the favored lobotomy was being fleshed out. When shock therapy failed to control the population, lobotomies started, and in 1939 the population of the hospital swelled to almost over 2,400 patients. A total of 278 people died at the hospital that same year. Neurology experts often call Danvers the birthplace of the prefrontal lobotomy. Ouch. Visitors to the hospital during these years reported lobotomy patients wandering around staring blankly at nothing, unaware of who they were or what they were doing. Large budget cuts in the 60s played a major role in the progression of closing the Danvers State Hospital, and with nicknames like Hell Hill Hospital and Lunatic Asylum, the hospital began slowly closing its facilities by 1985. The original hospital wards were closed and abandoned soon after. During the 80s, reports began to filter out of the hospital about missing teenage patients. The stories of ghostly figures and shadows in the windows were thriving. Are the ghosts of the lobotomized patients still aimlessly walking the realms of this now demolished hospital? What do you think? And number 1, the Bridgewater Triangle. Just a couple miles south of Boston is one of the most interesting and bizarre places in Massachusetts. I chose this as the number 1 spot due to not only the paranormal ghostly figures that have been seen across the vast plains, but 200 miles of connected weird events that will definitely catch our attention. It's named from the triangle shape. The paranormal events and phenomenon that occurs within these mapped lines includes as many as orbs, UFOs, Bigfoots, fairies, skinwalkers, alien hybrids, you name it, it's there. Well, possibly there. The towns of Raynham, Brockton, Norton, and Taunton are all subject to a universal head scratcher. In the 70s there of course was a surge of UFO witnesses, at the same time several Bigfoot. Huh, that's interesting. Massachusetts just keeps getting stranger and stranger, doesn't it? Huge humanoid creatures, motherships, and landed UFOs have also been spotted and reported within this 200 square foot mile radius. Do you think this place is like a Skinwalker Ranch type of place? Maybe some motherships are trying to just reconnect with the Wi-Fi upstairs? I don't know. Whatever it is, the Bridgewater Triangle has been home to numerous documentaries and folklore and attracts spooky goers each year with its variety of paranormal activity. Number 5, Havok Swamp. Already sounds pretty scary in itself. Something about swamps, you know what I mean? During the 17th century, the Havok Swamp was used as a fortress by the Wampanoag people, the predominant band of natives in the area, against invasion by the early British settlers. It played a landscape role in King Philip's War as a strategic base of which to launch assaults with nearby English settlements. During the 18th and 19th centuries, settlers deemed the swamp to be useless, barren land, and it didn't really do much besides sit there and just kind of take up space. They attempted to drain it and convert it into a profitable farmland, however nothing really grew. The natives of the region placed a much higher value on the swamp, however, for centuries. The first people had relied on hunting food there, riddled with fauna, and the swamp had gained an important legend and folklore among them as being a place where many things meet. They named it Havok, the Algonquin term meaning place where spirits dwell, and that's exactly what people say they do. Dwell there. What makes this swamp so haunted is the different purposes it was used for. A cesspool for bones of the fallen. Some places are just more susceptible to violence and death over the years, and that reputation of spirits lingering is what's so heavy and cold about this location. Much of the swamp served a dual purpose as a sacred burial ground as well. The Havok is occasionally referred to as the home of the Hobomok. The Wampanoag people worshipped and feared Hobomok, the chief deity of death and disease. Hobomok, composed of human souls of the dead, was known to congregate in areas like the Havok Swamp. Thus the term and lore stuck. Yep, just a giant mud monster swallowing souls. Charming. There are many stories and legends that have become associated with this swamp and are even connected to the number 1 on my list. It remains a place of mystery and fear and apparently good frog catching. Number 4, LEL Cemetery. LEL Cemetery is a cemetery located in Lowell, Massachusetts. Founded in 1841 and located on the banks of the Concord River, the cemetery is one of the oldest garden cemeteries in the country, making it a perfect place for violence and an eternity of soul searching. Many of Lowell's wealthy industrialists are buried here under lavish Victorian tombstones. Visitors have claimed that this is one of Massachusetts' most haunted cemeteries. What makes a haunted cemetery more haunted than another haunted cemetery, you know? Is there like a competition or like a quota or something? Just gotta keep the numbers up. What is it? I feel like every local claims their cemetery is the oldest and most haunted, and this brings me to our fair maiden here, the mysterious witch, Bonnie. A popular meeting place amongst the local teens at night for some scares and some screams, the statue of a woman with her arms outstretched on a rectangular tomb, her hands clutching a veil that falls down behind her body as though it were a cloak caught in the wind. Her eyes lay cold, staring at the heavens. Under her left eye, a black tear. Paranormal researchers have claimed that the statue holds more of an electromagnetic current, and strange things can be seen in front and around the statue, making it seem like it's moving from time to time. Creepy. There is local lore that if you leave a coin or ribbon on the statue, then you'll get good luck, and in return, if you steal or take the items from the statue, the haunting whispers of bad karma will follow. Although research shows that this gravesite holds no actual sinister history, the ghostly sightings surrounding it are a hotspot within the cemetery. I bet at night under the moonlight this woman could be very terrifying.
Number 3 on this list is Central City Masonic Cemetery. Of course we had to have a cemetery on this list. No haunted place list would be complete without at least one of them. Thrillist says, founded as a mining town in the late 1800s, Central City is now known as a destination for those looking to head to the hills for a gambling fix in the casinos that now dot the area. But one thing hasn't changed. The woman in black who twice a year appears in this hilltop cemetery above the town. Known as the Columbine Lady, she comes to visit the grave of John Cameron, a prominent former resident of Central City who died in 1884. Some believe she is his fiancée, appearing to leave flowers for her lost love on November 1st, the anniversary of Cameron's death, and April 5th, a date for which the significance remains a mystery, much like the woman herself. This place is safe to go to if, of course, you do not go during these times. She's been coming for a long time, and anyone who tried to interfere with her has had to pay the price. Now, people kind of suspect that she was in a relationship with John Cameron, but there's also another theory. Many people think that John actually wronged her in his life, and that this woman in black comes twice a year to double check that John is still dead and hasn't come back to life by some means. Pretty scary tale for sure. One that you probably don't want to get involved with. Number 2 on this list is the Broadmore. Located in Colorado Springs, this hotel would be freaking awesome if it wasn't so haunted. Thrillist says this sprawling 5-star hotel has a lot to offer for anyone seeking a relaxing and indulgent getaway. But along with the golf course, spa, and nearby zoo, there's one feature you won't find in any brochure. Staff and guests alike have reported the presence of a woman, often in the penthouse where Julia Penrose, co-founder of the property, once lived. While not confirmed, Penrose's death is said to have been surrounded by a strange occurrence in which she went missing and was later found, confused and shaking in the woods nearby with no memory of how she got there. She passed away a week later, and perhaps her spirit remains, watching over the property and seeking answers about her own mysterious death. Now I am wondering, man, how did Penrose die? Like, this whole story feels like a movie or something like that. I truly think somebody needs to get in here and investigate what the heck happened here. Because, like, should we be scared of the region because this is gonna happen again? Was Julia doing something specific before she disappeared, and should we avoid doing that thing? There are just so many questions that need to be answered here, and sadly I can't do it from the comfort of Toronto. That being said, I'm also not trying to end up like Julia, and therefore will be leaving this job to somebody far more qualified. And finally, number 1 on this list is the Highlands Ranch Mansion. A truly picturesque mansion, one that's been standing for over 100 years and one that's home to a ghostly spirit. Thrillist says this sprawling stone mansion, built in 1891, is often rented for weddings and events due to its impressive structural beauty and picturesque prairie views. But it's also a historic property and somewhat of a museum of the times, with a bit of paranormal activity sprinkled in. The ghost of Julia Kistler, daughter of F. Kistler, who bought the property in 1926, is said to haunt the home, with visitors and staff alike reporting hearing a woman's sobs, seeing a silhouette figure moving about when the mansion was otherwise vacant, and lights sporadically turning on and off. I don't know about you guys, but during my wedding ceremony, I want to hear beautiful sounding music, not the sobs of some ghost woman thing. Apparently she's crying all the time, and this woman's emotions are not something to play with. There's a story where once several children were playing around here. There was a wedding ceremony scheduled here for later that day, and the children were off doing what kids do before the proceedings got underway. They ran into this ghost crying, and then they started to make fun of her. They were rude and definitely unkind, but they also didn't deserve what she did next. It's said that in a fit of rage, she flew inside their bodies and possessed each and every one of them for a short time, showing them things that were truly terrifying. Things that have ultimately changed those boys' lives and altered their mentality forever. Any ghost that's capable of doing something like that, that's one that I don't want to be around.